Thank you so much, Chris, and good afternoon. It's afternoon here in Nairobi, so good morning, good afternoon from whichever time zone you are joining us from. Welcome to this webinar, which will be the first of many learning sessions under the RADP project. And we are looking forward to basically just learn from this process and to also reflect on the Africa Disability Protocol, which we know came into effect in 2024 with the 15th ratification. And so we know that this particular this particular instrument stands as a landmark instrument for the rights and dignity and really for the inclusion of persons with disabilities across the continent.
Handicapés,
So we
donc
are
le continent.
excited to have this
Donc nous
conversation, and
sommes
so in
très
each
Estamos
of
muito
these
emocionadas
learning
de ter esta
sessions, we'll
conversação
be
e
seeking
em
to
qual
answer one question. And for this particular session today, we'll really be reflecting on what is the role of regional bodies in advancing the Africa Disability Protocol. We know that there are many actors who are required really to fulfill different mandates in facilitating the realization of the Africa Disability Protocol. But today will be as we look forward to really interrogate a number of these actors. Today in particular, we'll be focusing on just the regional bodies. And so to join me in this conversation, we have, a really exciting panel that will be speaking to us from their experience. They hold, very, very senior roles and have been advancing this disability conversation across the continent. And so really, we have a really distinguished panel that will be speaking to us about this conversation. And so once again, welcome. I hope you've taken note of the housekeeping elements that Chris has taken us through, and thank you for that, Chris. And so at this point, allow me to welcome Colleen Roberts, who is the Global Technical Lead at Sightsavers, and who is also the technical lead for this ADP project that Sightsavers manages. Colleen, over to you.
Hello, and thank you, Monica, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone who is joining us. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out of their schedules to come with us today and discuss this really important topic. I'd like to also thank the African Disability Alliance for hosting this webinar series, and also to the European Commission for their generous support and funding for the Sightsavers realizing the African Disability Protocol, so RADP program, which we're implementing in Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Through this work, we really need to discuss and look at policies need to happen in practice. I think we can all agree. When it comes to the rights of people with disabilities, we need to make sure that policies don't just sit as documents with high-level duty bearers, but they're actually making a difference in the day-to-day lives of people, and especially the people who need it most. That's why through the work we've been doing with various stakeholders, such as organizations of people with disabilities, duty bearers, and broader civil society, we really saw the need to discuss a little bit more the role of the regional bodies. There's obviously quite a lot of awareness of the regional bodies and the vast kind of mandates they have. But then when we came to look at the African Disability Protocol, we thought it was a good moment to maybe have a webinar and have a discussion with the expert panelists who we're really glad could join us to really understand a lot more of these bodies, and understanding them helps us to know how we can engage them to influence and advocate for the rights of people with disabilities. So I really do encourage you to use this opportunity and this webinar as a moment to exchange, to share, to question, to learn, because we have some great speakers on the call today. And also a big thank you to the regional campaign with Sightsavers, who are also hosting many other webinars and series where we can look at how we can ratify and make sure the African Disability Protocol happens in practice. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time because we have a lot of really, really great discussions coming up today. So I'll just hand back over to Monica, who is going to support us in engaging with the first speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Colleen. And so, as you rightfully mentioned, I mean, we have quite a number of ratifications. I think we are now just past the 16th mark. And so I thought, let's now invite AK to just talk to us, about that progress. And so AK is the chair of the Advisory Committee on the Domestication of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in South Africa. He was appointed by the Minister of Justice to the South African Law Reform Commission, and is also a member of the Presidential Working Group on Disability, and is also, serves as the advisor in that capacity. So he'll be speaking to us as the CEO of the Africa Disability Alliance. So, AK, whenever you're ready, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Monica. Uh, I will speak on the significance of regional bodies in the ratification and the domestication of the Africa Disability Protocol, and we will look at at the gaps and opportunities for mainstreaming the needs of people with disabilities in the role and mandates of SADC. I think one of the things that we studied was the fact that SADC, as a regional body, is committed to fostering socio-economic cooperation, integration, and political and security collaboration among its member states. It champions development, collective development, and peace, and also it's an organ that, despite its advances in disability inclusion strategies, commitments to human rights, several challenges and gaps still exist. And one of them is the fact that not all SADC states have ratified the ADP. And we want to encourage members, not only in SADC, but in other regional bodies, to escalate their campaigns for the ratification of the Africa Disability Protocol, and the policy alignment and harmonization which would have been achieved as a result of the ADP has not occurred. There is limited awareness and advocacy. There are resource constraints that we have noticed that are slowing down the ratification and even the domestication of the ADP. There is insufficient data in monitoring mechanisms and weak institutional coordination mechanisms. We also see that there are key mismatches. There are key mismatches between the intended roles and functions of SADC and the actual needs and expectations of persons with disabilities across the region. And that's the same with the other regional economic bodies. Firstly, the incomplete ratification of ADP by SADC member states undermines the legal and normative foundation required for consistent protection and promotion of disability rights. Secondly, there is a disconnect between comprehensive standards outlined in the ADP and the fragmented or insufficiently aligned national or regional frameworks, resource constraints, low awareness, and limited advocacy efforts. And many states struggle to operationalize disability inclusive provisions due to insufficient funding, lack of technical expertise, and infrastructure barriers. So we look at those are the constraints that we are presently facing. But there are also opportunities. The treaty itself that establishes SADC and the other regional economic communities, these treaties can be used to ensure that disability is mainstreamed. They refer to human rights and social justice, equitable and sustainable development, inclusion of all citizens, and the unified voices of states that are embodied within SADC. They enable us to coordinate advocacy for disability rights. And we also see that the regional bodies could facilitate harmonized standards and provide technical assistance and monitor the implementation of the ADP. Some of their mandates encompass critical factors like in health, education, employment, and social protection. So, how can we then move forward? I think we can move forward by utilizing the opportunities that we see that are presented in the treaties, the protocols that come out of SADC. I wanted to start with one protocol in particular, that is the culture, information, and sport. The reason why I'm starting with that is because persons with disabilities in all countries really, they win more gold medals, silver medals than any other population group. And yet they receive very little investment in their sports and in the work that they do. But there are also other protocols around gender, health, education, training, employment and labor, facilitation of movement of people, fundamental social rights, and SADC is ambitious in trying to establish a protocol on disability. So in conclusion, let's say that the SADC and the other regional economic commissions have a critical role to play in advancing the rights of persons with disabilities through the ADP and their own treaties and protocols. By closing existing gaps and leveraging opportunities to mainstream OPD needs, SADC can help ensure that disability rights are embedded in the region's social, economic, and political fabric. Together, we can drive meaningful change for persons with disabilities, across the region. Thank you, Monica. Monica, I will be happy to take some questions as we go on. Thank you.
Okay, I can confirm that we already have some questions, so we'll raise that to you shortly. Okay, thank you so much, AK, for that, emphasizing that it's not just about the Africa Disability Protocol, but also looking at how to mainstream disability within other regional instruments, and so pursuing a mainstreaming approach as we have this disability conversation. So thank you for that, and really for prominently highlighting how then the regional bodies, the role that they play, and how then OPDs should be engaging with regional bodies in that respect. So I'd like to then invite Mr. Shoaib Chalkan, who is a prominent leader from South Africa with extensive experience and contribution to the advancement of persons with disabilities within regional and global frameworks. Mr. Shoaib has considerable national and regional experience on the advancement of the rights of persons with disabilities, having worked with the UN, the World Bank, and other entities of the UN system, as well as bilateral donor countries in Europe and other regions. Mr. Shoaib served as the Special Rapporteur on Disability of the Commission for Social Development between 2009 and 2014, and is currently the CEO of the Africa Disability Forum. So Mr. Shoaib will be speaking to us about how regional bodies currently engage on the ADP. So we've heard from AK, but now we'll be just hearing a different perspective. And Mr. Shoaib's focus is going to be on how regional bodies currently engage on the ADP and how this can be enhanced, across the board. Mr. Shoaib, over to you and welcome.
Thank you, Edwina, Monica. Sorry, I think I'm going to speak about the regional bodies engaging on ADP, but also on the role of OPDs, right? How they can play a role in furthering ratification, and also advocate and lobby and engage with regional bodies with a focus on SADC. But let me first say that at the highest level, the human rights instrument or the mechanism that has been tasked with the obligation to monitor the implementation of the ADP is the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. And that commission, the Banjul Commission, they are based in Banjul, Gambia, also have the primary responsibility to interpret the African Disability Protocol. And they also have a responsibility to mobilize for the ratification of regional human rights instruments, including the ADP. For example, this past week, the Commission, the Banjul Commission, organized a continental workshop on the ratification of regional human rights instruments. So OPDs itself, they can engage with the Commission through ordinary sessions, awareness campaigns, and in the development of general comments. So as you are aware, if we take the example of the CRPD, the way governments in Africa engage the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in Geneva on the CRPD, there's the same opportunity that the protocol allows for OPDs to also engage, like in the development of general comments and so forth. Now, the regional, like SADC, these regional economic bodies, they are primarily focused on trade and the economy in the region and so forth, and integrating the economy. But they hold a lot of potential given their capacity to mobilize political support and resources to implement different programs. Although, as I said, their primary objective is economic integration. So if you look at the European Union as an example, the EU ratified the CRPD and has played a major role in how the CRPD is being implemented in Europe. But unfortunately, in Africa, there is no similar precedence of a regional economic body ratifying a human rights instrument. That's unfortunate. There are a number of ways to engage regional economic bodies such as SADC, or the Southern African Development Community. One is through the adoption of a common position, for instance, for SADC members to ratify the ADP. If the regional bodies take positions on trade treaties and so forth, it is also possible for them to take a position on the ratification of the ADP. Second, regional specific instruments such as protocols can also be adopted by SADC. Such an example is in this region we have the Southern African Federation of Disabled, right? In the West Africa, we have the West African Federation of Disabled and the East African, Central Africa, and so on. These are OPDs, regional structures. And they engage with these, with SADC and like in West Africa, with the West African Economic Community and the East African Economic Community and so forth. So OPDs, in my view, need to engage, with SADC, but SAFOD itself, as an developed a regional protocol. This was now before the African Disability Protocol came into force and was still in the development stage. They developed their own protocol. It was never adopted by SADC up till today. But they had engaged with SADC to quite extensive, and to the extent that they had developed the protocol, they had it there, and it was ready to be adopted. But at this stage, things seems to have fallen off the table. But I still think that this is an example for us to see how the OPD regional structures can engage with these regional economic bodies. SAFOD is an example that I'm using. But I know that in West Africa, ECOWAS is also, ECOWAS, in the West African Federation of Disabled engages with ECOWAS. There is a relationship. And these are the kinds of engagements that we can foster between these, the OPD regional structures and these economic regional structures such as SADC and ECOWAS. There are some regional bodies that are also undertaking different measures to meet the obligations under the ADP. But I think using SAFOD to engage with SADC, with the support of the African Disability Forum, African Disability Alliance, we can together, as a united, come together as a united front, SAFOD, African Disability Forum, African Disability Alliance, national OPD federations, lobby and advocate for SADC to accelerate this ratification of the protocol by all SADC member states in the Southern African region. I think this is what we should be focusing on. How we can form a united front, work together, and engage with SADC to increase the ratification and the implementation of the protocol. At the same time, we have to also acknowledge that there are opportunities for OPD federations at the regional level, like African Disability Alliance, African Disability Forum, and at the sub-regional level, SAFOD and national. We can all come together, as I mentioned, form a united front, but there are some realities we need to face. We need a bit more resources. Our capacity need to be strengthened, and we need to have a clear understanding of what it is that we're trying to achieve when we reach out to SADC and these other structures. And what I mean by that is that quite often, when we engage with these regional bodies and governments also, OPDs tend to have a long list of demands, and quite rightly so. But the governments or SADC or structure of that nature often think in terms of what is achievable. So we need to either go with a small list of urgent demands, what is urgent in the region, or we can have single issue campaigns like inclusive education, employment, and so on, instead of having a long list of demands. And we also need to engage with them in selling the ADP. We need to engage in a way that convinces the duty bearers like SADC and the governments that the ADP is an advantage for them. That there are advantages to ratification and implementation. So it should be in a non-threatening way. So there's one last thing I wanted to mention also, is that there's another structure that provides us with an opportunity to engage governments and SADC and so forth on the ratification, and that is the African Union Parliament. I think we don't use the AU Parliament enough, because it is an opportunity for us to reach members of Parliament from African states. But they are not divided in regions, but we can reach these members of Parliament and engage them on the ratification of the ADP, and look further to how these governments, because the members of Parliament and African Union Parliament represent so many different governments, but we can then sell the idea also, and advocate for government to government, packages and sharing of information and so forth. One last thing before I close. I don't know if my time is up, but we also need to be aware that we lack data in Africa. So when we develop an advocacy strategy or an approach, or when there's an engagement with SADC or the African Union Parliament or even our own governments, we often have a lack of data that weakens our advocacy. And that causes governments also to take a step back, because if you don't have hard data, they see it as a list of grievances rather than an argument for improving the lives of people with disabilities in Africa. Let me conclude there, because I see Monica is putting a camera on. I think that's the signal for me to finish. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shoaib. I think we've learned so much from your submission. I think you made, taking a strong position about the role of the regional OPDs and how we can engage them more, working through engaging the regional mechanisms through the regional OPD coordination bodies, I think is very strategic. And I really like what you said about perhaps looking at what is most urgent in the region, that we can't talk about everything at the same time. Should we take a single issue campaign approach? So again, a number of questions are coming up around how we can strengthen that kind of engagement. So we'll come to that, but thank you so much for those submissions. And I thought this would be, and you've talked about the AU Parliament, and I think this is really a good time for us to then transition to hear from SIOF. And so SIOF is the South African Youth Forum, and they've been engaging the South Africa Parliament in particular very, very closely on a number of issues, and of course also focusing on inclusion. So allow me to then invite Rele Bohile. So I'll just call her Rele for the purposes of not massacring her name. So Rele is a disability rights advocate. She's a health researcher and also a lecturer. And she serves as a RightsCon advisor on disability rights. She provides a lot of strategic guidance to ensure meaningful inclusion of persons with disabilities in global conversation on matters of digital rights, on governance and surveillance. And she also leads the disability cluster of the South Africa Youth Forum, SIOF, championing inclusive policy development and regional advocacy for the rights of persons with disabilities. And so for the purposes of this discussion, Rele will be giving giving us an example of how SIOF has been engaging with the regional bloc within the SADC region, and really we'll just be seeing what are some of the lessons we can learn from them. Rele, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monica. I'm greatly honored and privileged to engage in this very important conversation. And like she said, I'm from the Southern Africa Youth Forum, which is a regional body for youth organizations and youth in the SADC region. I think at SAYOT, we pride ourselves in saying the youth are not the leaders for tomorrow, but they are the leaders for today. As she mentioned as well, that I'm also the head of the disability cluster. We operate by means of different clusters in order to try and address the different needs that the youth of the SADC region have. But like she said, with regards to disability, as the disability cluster of the Southern Africa Youth Forum, we also work with the Southern Africa Youth Forum Parliament. We have the Youth Parliament, where that also has a standing for persons with disabilities. So our work with them really makes sure that we position youth, particularly with youth with disabilities, in key leadership strategic areas where they champion influencing of policies and where they can get to even engage in conversations that drive policies. And also we make sure that it's really the youth with disabilities who are there, because they always say nothing for us without us. And in addition, we have the annual forum where the youth from all across the SADC region gather together and we discuss pressing issues. Maybe with regards to disabilities, it will be pressing issues with regards to disabilities. So the recommendations of the youth are then collected together as declarations that are presented before the heads of states of the SADC region. And that is how we are able to make sure that the needs of the youth really get to those who have the power, who can make decisions about the present needs. We've also been championing the Southern Africa Youth Champions for the Albinism Agenda. This was just after one of the forums where there was a cry that the youth with albinism are really going through a lot of the violations when it comes to their rights to protection because of the pressing myths, about their body parts and all the misconceptions around albinism. So that was, I can say it has been quite a success because the youth themselves were championing. We worked in different countries, including Malawi, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. So that is also how we engage the organizations of persons with disabilities to bring them on board. We also strategically engage in research. We are currently responding to the United Nations goal, where we are responding to a research, or rather a report on the multiple and intersectional forms of discrimination against women and girls with disabilities. So as the regional body, we engaged different countries to embark on research on that and give us a report that will be shared with the United Nations in collaboration with our partner organizations, the traditional and religious network for the traditional and religious peacemakers network. So the organizations of persons with disabilities engaged in this research include Madagascar, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Lesotho. So in this way as well, we are able to get together to gather data at the grassroots level, because then when we have shared this with the United Nations, when the policies come back to us, it is much easier as well at the domestication level. And it's quite important as well when the organizations as well, who are more familiar with what is happening at the grassroots level, get to share about the gaps. Another research that we are embarking on is with regards to accessibility and inclusion of persons with disabilities with regards to housing and transport. And then we also engaged various countries as well, Namibia included, Zimbabwe and South Africa, so that we can know, okay, what are the gaps and what are the recommendations, how far we are, because then with research, we are able to monitor the progress that has been made. And in addition as well, I think it was mentioned that, persons with disabilities have quite a lot of talents, but it seems like they're not being recognized. We also have a network for persons with a network of organizations for persons with albinism, where we really support the activities, or rather the programs of our member organizations, in terms of strengthening the voices of persons with disabilities and ensuring that we create a greater impact. And I must say that one of the highlights has just been the Mr. and Miss Albinism Africa that was hosted by one of our member organizations. A lot of member organizations are doing great things, including promoting awareness and inclusion with music, among others. So in the interest of time, I will end there. I'll be open to questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rele, for sharing those exciting pieces of work that SIOF is part of, and also just learning from the research pieces that you've been able to embark on, and just as Mr. Shoaib, mentioned at the end the element around insufficient data, and again, these research initiatives will really, help to get us there in providing credible and concrete evidence around some of the things that we are, trying to advance through various advocacy efforts. So once again, congratulations to SIOF for the work that you're doing, and again, a number of questions are already coming through. So let me then open up. So thank you, really. I'll be posing some specific questions to you. All right. So thank you to the speakers so far. We've gotten a number of reactions in the Q&A section, and so I'll just be picking a few, and hopefully we can get to all of them by the time we come to the end of this session. There is a question here around from Paul from the Barrier Free Finance Initiative, and he's asking about, in addition to the protocol, are there any other documents and data about disability statistics and dynamics of disability inclusion on the African continent? So I don't know if that AK or Mr. Shoaib, would you be able to respond to that?
Monica, let me go, and then Shoaib can help me.
Yes, please.
Yeah, Shoaib can help me with continuing with the answer. Now, the thing is, we have a problem, and the problem that we have is that disability statistics is not reliable and is not always there when you need them. And for instance, we often argue about how do we collect those statistics. Do we use the Washington Group set of questions? Some countries don't do that. Or do we use African Union strategies for collecting harmonized statistics? Some of these strategies have not been used in several African countries. However, the estimates of 80 million people with disabilities in Africa are often quoted. And although people say we are about 10 to 15% of the continent's population, that might not be correct or accurate. As in the World Health Organization itself, I think it has increased the percentage to 16%. But bear in mind that our continent has a lot of situations that cause disability. And one of them is war and conflict. The other one is poverty, and so on and so forth, health problems. So I think to say that we are a certain figure like 80 million might well be an underestimate of the exact number of people with disabilities on the African continent. But yes, you are right. We need more statistics, and we need to agree on the tools that we use to gather these statistics, and then to embed disability statistics into the national statistical systems, like when they carry out censuses, that they deliberately include disability as one of the criteria for those censuses. So it's a difficult question to answer, but I hope that I've given you some little bit of insights into the fact that, number one, statistics are not there. Number two, the tools for getting statistics on disability are there. We have the Washington Group, and we also have several AU declarations and strategies on statistics that have not been applied. So we don't have adequate statistics. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, AK. Mr. Shoaib, if I could just bring you in to respond to a different perspective of that question, and thank you for that contribution, AK. We have Rod asking about the global data, for example, the WHO publications and what have you. And so the challenge he's posing to the OPD community is how we interact with national federations, and what should be the duty of providing data to the national federations so that they then engage with the national data systems. How do you see the role of OPDs aligning in that way?
Okay. First, let me just follow up on what AK was saying, that yes, as I said also, we have a lack of sufficient data and statistics. But there's data available from UN agencies such as WHO, UNICEF, UNESCO, and so forth. But it doesn't cover the continent of Africa, right? It deals with a number of different countries and so forth. It gives you a very good picture of what's happening in different countries. So one can mine, for data in the UN system and so on, using UNICEF and UNESCO, WHO, and so on. But I also wanted to say that things are improving. For example, the MasterCard Foundation have contracted the University of Stellenbosch in South Africa to do a continental-wide study on assistive technology in Africa. So if people now begin to look at the continent as a whole and do proper research and gather data and statistics, that will give us a better picture, hopefully, out of a study from Stellenbosch University. What was the second question again?
Yeah, so the question is really about the interaction of OPDs, local OPDs, with the national federations, to say what kind of relationship should exist there from a data perspective, whether it's reporting, because obviously the OPDs are receiving funding from different sources.
Yeah.
And they're making different, they're achieving different things in as far as those project objectives are concerned. But how should they then feed into the national data system through the national federations?
Yeah, look, whatever information the state has, the governments have at the national level, should be shared with OPDs, right? But the government is not going to come to you with it. You need to approach them. If there's a lack of engagement between the OPDs and the governments, that is a problem, right? And that is a problem that we have in most countries in Africa. So when you introduced AK, Monica, right? You mentioned his role that he plays in South Africa with engaging with the government and so forth. And that is a good example of where civil society, OPDs, and the state engage regularly. I think, AK, you have meetings twice a year with the President of South Africa on these matters. There's a presidential committee and so forth. And, the state would engage organizations and individuals like AK to advise and so forth. But it doesn't happen in every country, unfortunately. So we need to share also some of these good news stories. Otherwise, we always look at things as it's not happening, but in fact, there are good examples that we can use. There's just a lack of information that's being shared and so forth. We need more awareness raising, but using these good examples. I just saw here in the Q&A, somebody saying this is the first time they hear of the African Disability Protocol. That's not good for us, It's not unfortunate. But anyway, let me stop there because I'm also aware of the time.
Yeah, thank you, Shreya. And I think I also saw the comment around just limited knowledge around the African Disability Protocol. And, this learning session and the series the series of sessions that will follow are really intended to do that, to create awareness around the protocol, but then also to just have different conversations around the protocol to answer emerging questions, just out of curiosity, some of the things that are coming up from the OPD community, but then also other actors. So this is really the main purpose of this learning session. So there's a question, and perhaps this may be perhaps our second to last question. That's from Guinea. Osman from Guinea is talking to us about the commitment that the country has on to the CRPD, that there's been a lot of concerted effort around the CRPD to the point that the ADP and the ratification therein has become a secondary objective. And so the question he's posing to the panel is, how do we rally, voices around the importance of the ADP within such a context where all government efforts are really focused on the CRPD? I don't know any of the panelists who would like to take that question.
AK, do you want to start? And I'll follow.
Yes, well, I could start by saying at the end of the day, the Africa Disability Protocol was modeled around the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We were aware that there would be misunderstandings and confusion about the differences between the two instruments. The ADP, however, then went on to look at the lived realities of people with disabilities in Africa, which were excluded at the time when we campaigned for the UN CRPD. And in Africa, we have things like people with albinism being abused and sometimes being victimized. We have conflicts that create disability on a daily basis. Of course, there is conflicts everywhere. But the whole idea was to try to come with a policy instrument that can be enforced within the AU legal architecture. That's why the protocol was created. It was not to replace the UN Convention. Remember, the UN Convention has already been ratified by over 40 African countries. It is rather to complement and make sure that we have African problems that are also addressed within a legally binding policy instrument. Thank you. Over to you, Shweb.
Thank you. Yeah, And maybe Shoaib, as you provide your submission, I think it may link to this last question that we'll address today from Ida, because I thought it was a really good question around the Pan-African Parliament, because they have developed a model disability law supporting again the ratification of the ADP. So the question there in summary is, how can we position the Pan-African Parliament, that particular disability law, as a ratification tool? So you can combine your submission, but also just focus a bit on the model law. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That is very important because, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The model law is there. And we must use it, and we have this lack of engagement with the African Union Parliament, but we should really go back there and engage with him on the implementation of the model, or the adoption of the model law, or using it as an example. It's just something that we haven't done. But when it comes to the ADP and the UNCRPD, during the negotiations for the CRPD, and the drafting process, there wasn't sufficient attention being paid to actual conditions in Africa. So the ADP plugs that gap. It's important that we have this African instrument that focuses on things. For example, we can use an example like albinism, and the conditions of people with albinism that they face, and the threats that they face to their lives and so forth. So yes, it plugs a hole, but I just want to go back to that model law. Thank you for raising that. That is a very, very critical part of this discussion that we haven't paid attention to. Thanks, Monica.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shoaib. So as I bring Joyce to really bring this to a close, I wanted to just hand it back to the speakers, to just a minute for you to give concluding remarks, a minute each. And then Joyce from NASCO, which is one of the umbrella bodies for the OPDs in Zimbabwe, will just be sharing with us her reflections from this session, and then also closing the session for us. But before Joyce comes in, please, we can start with Rele, then AK and Shoaib, and then we'll conclude with Colleen. Rele, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Monica. I think my takeaway from this conversation will be to go and this conversation on the disability protocol, I will submit it further for our youth forums, because at the end, we are able to take that conversation further and distribute it as well to our partners who are able to have much authority on this as well. The aspect of the model law is a takeaway that I will take home for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Rele. Appreciated. Shoaib?
Yes. Sorry, I was watching my phone. It's going crazy. I think my takeaway from here is that I'm concerned, that we were not doing enough awareness raising around the ADP. I think we need to really do that. We need to get all the OPD federations on the continent on board. I know we're focusing on a few countries today in this webinar, but I think we really, really need to do a bit more work, much more work on raising awareness. And in raising awareness, we need to also ensure that we build the capacity of OPDs around the ADP in a way that was done with the UNCRPD. Thanks, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you, Shoaib. AK?
Thank you very much, Monica. I think one of the participants, I think it's Yusuf Nomamod, summed it very well, that we need to overcome the trust deficits that exist between persons with disabilities and their governments, and to ensure that disability is mainstreamed in all the sectors of government and society. I think the use of the ADP, the Model Disability Law, and the UN Convention, those are tools that are already there that we should continue to use as we fight for our rights. But also to reiterate what Shueb mentioned earlier about the need for unity of purpose among and between our organizations of persons with disabilities and within them as well. If we don't have that unity, then we are not likely to be taken seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, okay. Unity, working together, making sure we are creating awareness is what I'm hearing from the panel. Colleen, do you have any reflections from what we've had so far?
No, I think these have been really important points, and I think I've definitely learned a lot from the session. It's been really insightful. So I think my key takeaway is how can we create more spaces for this type of learning and sharing that we've had today? Because I think it's been a really big eye-opener for us all in terms of how we can mobilize. And there was a lot of discussion of unity, which is great to hear. So definitely, I think the takeaway is like, how can we replicate more spaces like this, be it these types of discussions at regional webinar, or be it also within different country and national umbrellas. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Colleen. So Joyce, as you prepare to come in, I just wanted to emphasize that what comes next from this planning team is that we're going to be producing a brief, again, just synthesizing some of the comments, some of the reflections that have come from today's session, again, for broader circulation, for our continued learning. And then we also invite you to continue engaging in this discussion, and we also look forward to the next learning session. So Joyce, over to you to give the concluding remarks. Thank you so much. And Joyce, you're muted.
Thank you for that. Good afternoon. Thank you, Monica, for the opportunity. I think as I was listening, I'm deeply encouraged that by the insights that were shared by our esteemed presenters, that the regional bodies, today's dialogue has shown us that, or it has reaffirmed the importance and the role that the regional bodies play in terms of the implementation, the ratification and implementation of the ADP. They are central to shaping inclusive governance. They are also instrumental in policy harmonization and accountability, and maybe developing accountability frameworks and that uphold the rights of persons with disabilities. We have heard the presenters and especially the examples that were given by Sayo. What it means is, and from the presentations, I would say from all the presentations, it is evident that as OPDs, we need to be highly organized and also to put our heads together on how we can make meaningful engagements with the regional bodies, maybe even to do maybe what I have problems with his name, Schwab, highlighted that it's not only the ADP, but other regional instruments that also need to be reflective of disability issues. So the mandates of regional bodies already encompass social development, human rights, and inclusive governance. What is needed now is the inclusion of disability-specific frameworks in their mandates, backed by political will, technical guidance, and sustained participation. Inclusion, I would want to highlight that maybe probably as OPDs, we also need to continue to be capacitated for us to be able to engage these regional bodies effectively. I heard Shaibu talking about SAFOD. They, even the Africa Disability Alliance, they are regional bodies that can also actually ensure that us as smaller or country OPDs, local OPDs, we are able to also contribute meaningfully and support the advocacy efforts that need to be to be done. I think I would then want to thank the presenters and the interpreters, participants who took time to be with us today. I also want to give special appreciation to OPD's networks and the regional partners who continue to champion the disability rights in every corner of the continent. Your lived experiences, expertise, and their resilience are the backbone of the movement. And this movement, I think, is critical in terms of ensuring that what we are talking about here comes to reality. And I would want us to edge maybe what Monica indicated, that we need to continue these discussions. We need to keep them alive and ensure that our voices are heard. Because if we slacken, then it may not come to reality. But in concluding, I would say that inclusion is not a one-off event, it's a process of transformation. It requires shifting mandate, allocating resources, and embedding disability inclusion into every policy, program, and M&E mechanisms. So I think these are issues that we need to be talking about when we engage the regional bodies, and also maybe issues to do with the policy harmonization, uh, especially the resource mobilization. Now, when we are talking of capacity building of OPDs, we are also talking of engagements. We need those resources. So how we can mobilize to ensure that we engage effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joyce. Thank you. We are most appreciative of your submission. And thank you also to the panelists for really a very insightful discussion. So again, this is going to be a quarterly reflection and learning, learning sessions. So we look forward to the next one before the end of the year. See you then, and thank you so much for making the time. Enjoy your afternoon.